Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium's webinar. And we're focused on the confidence in action, advancing your company's supply chain risk and resiliency maturity. As I said before, please do log in to the poll EV. Say where you're from. Please do that and make sure that's working as we get to more interaction throughout the webinar. And with that, I'll just go straight into the deliverables today. Again, this is an open mic dialogue, so you can ping me if you want to ask a question out loud or use the chat, whatever you would like. Thank you, Daniel from Chicago. And we'll get into that. And we want to talk about, what we've seen as the best practices in supply chain risk and resiliency and gain your insights there also, and how your company manages those supply chain risks. And then we want to get your input as well as, maybe your colleagues, what they're thinking. So please make this as interactive as possible. With that, Greg, intro.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks a lot for hanging out with us today. I'm Greg Schlegel. I'm the CEO, founder of Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. We're 33 companies. We're about 1,700 folks around the globe. We've been in business for 15 years. We operate in 23 countries. Jim and EIG is a long-standing member. As you see on the right side, we have three pillars. We do education, consulting, and software as a service to identify, assess, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks around the globe. On the left, we have a couple of offerings. We have two certificate courses. One is for manufacturers, the other is for logistics and geared towards healthcare. We have an online readiness assessment that assesses your supply chain process maturity. We're going to talk about that today. We also have another online assessment. It's geared around risk and resiliency. We're going to talk about that because it identifies how mature your company is, what your risk appetite is as a company, and what your culture is. We'll talk about that today. We have something very new. We have something called the Trust Accelerator Index. That is a reciprocal scorecard. It comes out of a 12-month project we are working on with the US government on supply chain transparency and trust. And so that is very new. It's embryonic. We're actually looking for alphas. So we'll talk about that during the course of the discussion. We do coaching, consulting, and we have platform solutions to do heavy lifting for supply chain risk and resilience. So thanks a lot for attending, Jim.
Thanks, Greg. And with that, just a brief overview of EIG. We're 80 companies, of course, the consortium being the one that I spend most time with. And and so we're pretty joined at the hip here, Greg and I, as far as our outlooks on linking strategy to execution. And EIG, which was formed in 2017, so we're about 8 years old now, has about 80 partners in the group now. And we are, again, linking strategy to execution. We believe in people, process, data, and technology. Data is often left out in that in many companies and groups, but we believe that it is needed to be done in that order. If you do it in a different order, a lot of people like to do the technology first. Of course, today we're working on supply chain risk and resiliency as our priority, and we want to create that proactive culture. And so Greg mentioned trust. So that is a main principle of how do you create a culture of proactively addressing problems? Well, you need to have trust. So that's a brief introduction. And our 80 companies you can find on the EIG website, consultingeig.com. All very tenured experts that have been around for a long time. Very proud of our team. With that, I'll get right into it for today and why supply chain risk and resiliency matters, and we do rely on Gartner a bit. They are our friends for sure. You'll see them pop up quite a bit in this webinar. But they had a mesh supply chain resilience report in 2025 that found organizations scoring on that mesh maturity assessment were 2.5 times more likely to maintain operational continuity during major disruptions. So this is right in line with what we teach and what we're talking about today, and we want to get your feedback on also. And of course, Gartner emphasizes the moving from fragile to resilient to this anti-fragile supply chains, and that nearly 2/3 of supply chains remain fragile. I think that's generous to say 2/3. It's probably maybe even higher than that that are fragile today. From our, we know that there's about 10% as companies that are actually proactively looking at risks as a way to create differentiation in the marketplace and grow top line and grow EBITDA growth, as it says there. And those are the ones that are using all the volatility in this world as an advantage to beat their competition. So we definitely live in a volatile world today. VUCA is joined at the hip every day today. And if you don't have a SCR&R strategy, what do you need to do to start creating one? And how do you get out of the reactive firefighting mode and into the proactive mode? And that's what we want to talk about today. With that, we'll get right into the first question, or the main question today is, should you understand your supply chain capabilities, your maturity, before you launch supply chain risk and resiliency improvements? Greg and I talk about this all too much over beer, so to speak. This is our lament, is that we certainly believe in supply chain risk and resiliency, but if you can't spell supply chain and you don't have a common language of how you communicate within your organization about your supply chain, our question is, how could you be successful in supply chain risk and resilience and managing risks in your supply chain if you don't have a common language? So uh, we're real open to any of your thoughts there. We'll keep this open. Greg, your thoughts?
Well, we talk about it, as Jim said, and we've we've more or less maybe put a roadmap together, and our understanding is that it probably is pretty beneficial uh, to understand your supply chain capabilities and maturity, because we've seen statistics and clients who have improved their supply chain maturity across all their processes, improved their bottom line, and were much better prepared to get into supply chain risk and resiliency as a program. That's just what we've witnessed and read. So that's our perspective. We're looking
So,
for yours.
yeah, we're looking for yours. Open mic or type in the chat. Provoke us if we're tell us if we're crazy. Tell us if you agree. Tell us if we got one yes. All right.
Ha ha ha
We appreciate that.
ha.
Any other comments? Feel free to interrupt us anytime during this webinar, because that's what we want to talk about. We're gonna go through some slides and some thoughts to try to provoke you to maybe come up with your perspective, and you can formulate that over time. Wow, there we go. Wow, that happened all at once, Greg. How did that?
Works for me.
Yeah, I like that. So thank you, who's ever prolific there. Uh, let's see. I'm trying to make it out.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you make anything out there, Greg? Any common theme?
The capabilities, design, program design, supply chain design, uh, SCR&R. That's fine. I guess there's parts about misdirection as well. If you're not aligned with your processes and you have a weak process, and you're not aware of it, that's going to cause some misalignment and misdirection. But all good there. That's understandable. We're looking for feedback. We're looking for input because we have a proclivity, and we're looking to hear others and their opinions. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I think that came from Eric. Eric, thank you. I now read the chat, so now I know where it's coming from. I appreciate that. Yeah. The challenge of this tool is you have to put an underscore between words in order for them to be attached. Otherwise, every word is treated independent in the word cloud. So if you do have a phrase, place an
Yeah.
underscore in
I'm looking
between.
at I'm looking at David's ping as well. David, you're
Uh-huh.
right. Why are organizations reluctant to move to maturity? I suspect they're too busy. Remember the old adage of the guy who comes with a wheel, and the guys have a square and they're pulling it, and the guy says, "Here, take this wheel; it'll be better." Now we're too busy. We're too busy making it happen for the captain. I'm being a little glib, but after 45 years in supply chain, that's my best answer, Dave. Really, it's sad but true.
Yeah, I think that is, yeah. Yeah, busy is a killer. I like that. Yeah, I got some laughs out of that. That's
Yep, all
great.
good.
Yeah, that's, I'm my analogy is always, when I talk to the executives, like you say you're too busy or you're firefighting, and then you ask the leader, how did you become a leader? It says I was a firefighter,
That's right. The hero complex.
the hero. And I said, well, do you want all your employees to be heroes? And he goes, yes. And I said, so you want an environment where you're always fighting fires and you want to reward the heroes? And they say yes with 100% confidence.
Yeah.
I said, so you wouldn't want a boring environment where you would have no fires? Oh, no. Well, that could never be. I could never imagine a world without fires. And so that is like the culture that's out there in most companies. And the folks that are proactive, if they are proactive, what happens to the folks that are proactive? There's no fire, there's nothing to tell management that they solved. So what happens to the leaders like that?
Yep.
They
Well,
stagnate.
those are called exemplars. We
Yeah,
know
and
they're
they're
out
they're the exemplars, but if their manager doesn't recognize them for creating an environment where there are no fires.
there. Yep. Well, that's the enlightenment, Jim. That's being enlightened. All right, as a leader. So that's what exemplars tend to exemplify
Yeah,
is
but
the leadership.
you need a VP or a CEO gets up there and says, "I'm tired of firefighting. If I'm not going to reward firefighting, I'm only going to reward stability."
Correct. People behave based on how they're measured.
So if the CEO doesn't say that, it's not going to happen. So, all right, well,
Yep.
we
Very
could
good.
probably talk for the next 10 minutes on this topic, but we're gonna get to the agenda here. And again, we welcome any questions, comments, anything throughout this whole talk. It's open mic. We have some slides on supply chain risk and resiliency, maturity, as well as supply chain management readiness. And we have, the benefits, of course. Show me the money. Well, what are you going to get? Your bank. We have those standard slides that we've shown many times.
Mhm.
And how do we move from being reactive to being proactive? So with that, I'll turn it over to Greg on
Yeah.
let's talk about maturity a bit.
Yeah. We thought we'd start with this. This is our readiness assessment. It is free, but I'll go through if you haven't heard us give the spiel on this. It's free. It's been around with us for a good long time. What you're looking at is the chart, the output of a free online assessment to measure your process maturity and supply chain. We have 13 tenants. You see them on the chart. We think 13 tenants is a good representation of end-to-end supply chain. All right. The 13 tenants are broken up into color codes. The blue on the top right are what we consider strategic. The red on the bottom are what we consider tactical. And then the green on the left side of the chart are what we consider operational processes. Remember, these are processes. This assessment measures two things. It measures your process, supply chain process maturity, and also the inherent risk associated with those processes. So what are we looking at? Well, the black line you see is the as is condition coming from the answers from a client. All right. And so, how we measure the black line is the closer that line is to the center of the chart, the more mature that process is, and the less inherent risk, and vice versa. So, the black line measures the as is condition of the process maturity. The circles, green, orange, and red, measure the inherent risk, meaning if you operate your black line around that green circle, you're pretty much an exemplar, you're very mature, and you have less inherent risk. When you go from green to orange, that's less mature process, but more inherent risk. Orange to red, same thing. At red and beyond, we call it the ring of fire. That's very immature processes from our 45 years in supply chain, and you got a lot of inherent risk there. So we always ask the question, where are you on our supply chain maturity model? And then, a basic question, how mature are your supply chain processes? All right. So that's more or less the beauty is you get automatic charts and reports. It's free. That's the beauty. This is free. You can go right in. I think the URL is up on the top red, and I thought it was on the bottom as well. But you can go right
It's here.
into the tool and play around with it. All right. So we wanted to just start there because we think that supply chain maturity is a good primer for risk and resilience. Okay.
Yeah, and this to build on what Greg said, it's not just your maturity. And as we discussed, we're working on this N-tier supply chain visibility, it's your suppliers and your customers. So you're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain, right? So if your suppliers are weak and you're strong, you want to know that, right? So that's something to think about as you're working with your within your four walls as well as up and down the supply chain.
So we thought we'd start. There it is. Yeah, you can just plop that in there and go in there and have at it. All right. So to get a sense, this is a little different overview of the tool. Again, the charts on the left that you just saw, but with that you get a ranking. Once we capture all the data and then produce a score that you see under the gauge in the middle at the top. And then we have four areas, four segmentations. The green is exemplar, the yellow is mainstream, the orange, I'll say, is an apprentice, and the red is the ring of fire. So we try to color code, give you a gauge, give you a sense of where you are today, not where you want to go, but where your maturity is today across those 13 tenants. All right. And I think we have a client assessment result here on the left hand side. This is an actual chart from a client. It's not a manufacturer client, it's a service client. All right. So the questions are a little different. The tenants are the same, except for over at 9 o'clock on the chart, if you will. It We measure supply chain processes in terms of tools, techniques, and methodologies as opposed to manufacturing. What you see is the black line. That's the as is situation of this client. And then there's a second tier, tier two, which we take the strategic, tactical, and operational elements and calculate them and profile them for the client as well, because we always look at strategic, tactical, and operational strength. And in this case, this particular company came in as an apprentice. You can see that on the right side. They came in with a score of 6.83. All right. They're considered an apprentice in our segmentation. And then, as we say, we do strategic, tactical, and operational. We calculate them. The lower the number, the stronger the tenant. However, in this particular client engagement, we said, okay, let's go after where the biggest bang for the buck. All right. And it looked to us that the weakest area of this particular client's maturity was in the operational tenants. And so we thought the biggest opportunity for improvement, we would start and give them direction in terms of operational tenants. So just to give you a couple of threads on real live examples of clients. I think we have go
And
ahead,
I think
Jim.
what's impressive is you can learn this by just 20 minutes of an executive's time to understand where you are. And look at the insights you have. You know which tenants, which parts of your company are strong or weak. And if you have a group of your folks perform this assessment, we can roll it up so we can look at how
Yeah.
each of the folks are viewing the company. And it may be different, and often is, depending if
Mm-hmm.
you're in finance or supply chain or you're down on the factory floor. So everybody has a different perception, and it's gaining that alignment of that perception that really is very powerful on and figuring out what you need to work on. So people sit there and struggle days and years and years and years on what do they need to work on first, second, third. And here you have it in very simple terms with a
Yep.
20-minute assessment of 5 or 6 executives in your company. You're going to have, wow, you're going to have exactly what you need to work on first, second, and third. I mean, that's pretty powerful. I don't think there's anything else out there in the market that can do that quick, and it's free to get you started,
Free and it's visual. Yep.
and it's visual. So uh, we do have, over 500-600 assessments done. We can do benchmarking in your industry. How are you in your industry? And there's a lot we can do with it, as not just how you are within your own group, but how you are in the industry, how you are up and down your supply chain. With very little effort, you can gain a a really good understanding of what's stagnating you. Here's a question from Daniel. Greg,
Um,
you want to take it?
yep. Do you see conflict with competing goals, objectives, measurements by department? You absolutely positively, sir. It's called disjointed objectives. All right. It happens all the time. This and what comes out of this analysis, as Jim mentioned, when we have different disciplines in the same supply chain group, all right, evaluating their processes, they are inherently different. And it starts with a good laugh, all right, but it's perception. And then you dig deeper and you start to evaluate, we do, their measurements, because people behave how they're measured. And if you have conflicting objectives, even in your own supply chain group, you will end up having surprises. Yes, we see it all the time, and you got to fix that. Hopefully, I answered your question.
All right. So thanks, Daniel. Keep them
Yep.
coming.
Yep. Good question. It's reality.
Mm.
This one, we just wanted to finish our discussion here with Jim mentioned we have some active users. Yes, we do. We've had over 4,000 companies go through this analysis one way or the other over the last 10 years. At the moment, we've upgraded it several times, and it is what it is right now. It's online real time, and we have about 750 or more active users. And we wanted to just profile, we go across just about every industry sector known to man. All right. And I had a couple of testimonials. I took the electronics. I like that one. This was a VP. He said, provided a very comprehensive assessment, exposed potential areas for further investigation. Amen. And required that all stakeholders within his supply chain group got involved. I like this one too in aerospace. I've been in A&D as a former A&D plant manager. Your assessment tool was the most complete supply chain management assessment method I've seen to date, and I've been in the business 40 years. That was very gratifying. And let me see, we had chemicals. I'll pick chemicals. This was a good one because I've been in the chemical arena. SCM readiness, critical success factor. Before the assessment, we felt we had a fairly robust supply chain approach. The tool was a terrific wake up call for our supply chain team to do what? To go after the weakest link, as Jim mentioned. So, all good there. We just wanted to share with you a couple testimonials. I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. We'll move on to supply chain risk and resiliency. We talked about supply chain management readiness. And in this, this is kind of, these are the two assessments that we're talking about so far. And we want to explore, how these together dramatically accelerate your company's capability, cadence, and overall maturity. And we really believe that it's a paired lens, one looking inward on how you operate today, and the other looking outward to how you navigate risk in a world that gets more volatile by the minute, I guess by the second now. Uh, so first, you see the readiness that Greg already covered through those 13 elements. And as we talked about, what often happens is you get a robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of syndrome. Is you fix one of these things and the other things break because you don't have a balanced approach. And by having this visible to all the stakeholders, uh, you're able to see things. I just realized my camera's not on. Sorry about that. And so that's first. Second, we looked at we're going to look into risk, and on the right is the supply chain risk and resiliency maturity model that we developed over a number of years ago, and it has the five clear stages of foundational visibility, sense and response, risk management. So we have that to help us and to drive sustainability in your enterprise. And over the years, the consortium has brought many clients through these five stages. And often people ask, how long does it take? Well, it takes between, if you're really focused on it, about 18 months per stage. And that's pretty typical for most maturity models. But since we've been working with clients since 2010, 2015, most of them now are at that sustainability level and even a higher level. So again, we believe taking both these assessments really provides you that complete picture of your supply chain's health and your organization's and ability to navigate disruption. And we're not here to judge and say it's bad to be at one stage or another. It's what's bad is not knowing where you're at and not having everybody on your team in your organization knowing where you're at. So if you think you're one place and your team members think you're somewhere else, that's not really good. So I thought I saw a question come in.
Yeah, I answered it. It was a common themes, Jim. I kind
Okay.
of gave him what I saw: leadership, risk mitigation, intentional redundancies, and integrated supply chain. They,
Yeah.
they tend to come up on a regular basis as weakest links.
Yeah, especially for immature supply chains, right?
Yep.
They don't seem to understand that leadership is connected to the supply chain. They think they're independent. It's like, no, what you do does connect.
Well, there
But
are still some siloed supply chain groups out there, meaning they have conflicting objectives, and then they wonder why they have a surprise at the end of the month and the end of the quarter. So they're
yeah,
still out there, a lot of work to do.
yeah. a lot of opportunities, right? So we go back to Gartner again in this five-stage model. I think it's been around for a few decades now, and there's nothing wrong with it. It works, on the x-axis, you have, are you caught? Is your mindset on a cost or your service? So when you start a new company, you're going to service the world, right? You're going to solve all problems, but then you become fragmented to get that done. As you move up to stage two, you start building business units, and then as soon as you get to that, then you said, oh, we're too fat, we're too sloppy, we need cost out. So then what do? You centralize. And you're trying to figure out how to decentralize in your company and still build for growth and scale. So that's and to build that integrated supply chain. And your products are different. They have they pack into the truck differently. They might require refrigeration, some don't. Who knows what? But the problem is they don't integrate as well as you would like. So you're trying to consolidate your your footprint, and that is the biggest challenge. And I call it the one, two, three step. So many companies go through one, two, three, and then they get a new CEO, and then the new CEO blows up the company, and it goes through again. But they to provide customer value of turning it on its back to move to stage four and five, only maybe 15%, at 15, maybe 18% make it to stage four, and only about 5 to 10% actually make it industry specific, depends on the industry, make it to stage five. It's just the way it is. Again, the at the bottom of this, it's all inside out kind of view. In the top half of this is you're actually saying, I'm going to work from the outside in and look how to grow my company up and down the supply chain. So with that, we thought we'd line up our assessments here. So the supply chain management readiness assessment through the tiers that we just talked about really line up very well. Understand your current capabilities, understand how it's working between your different groups, and then once you get to a certain stage of confidence, you have a single language, then you want to launch your supply chain risk and resiliency program. And then when you do launch visibility, since you're speaking a single language of supply chain management, that visibility is actually going to make sense. And you won't be fighting, oh, I have my dashboard, you have your dashboard when it comes to risks, because across risks are not siloed in your company. It goes across your company. And so you really have to have a single language in the way you're operating. Now you can do it within a particular division and have some POCs in a division, but to really become predictable and get to stage four in maturity overall, you're going to need a very strong continuity of supply chain management. So I don't think there's any companies that make it to stage four that don't have a common language, a common processes, and have supply chain management kind of figured out by that time. And certainly aren't any resilient exemplars where they don't have a common language of supply chain and sustainability. Greg, your thoughts?
I agree wholeheartedly. The exemplars that we talk about, and folks, there's about 500 out there now across all sectors across the globe. They pretty much have their supply chain processes down pat and moved right into supply chain risk and resiliency, not as a point solution, but as a program. And many of the exemplars have been doing supply chain risk and resilience for over 10 years. It is a program. It's not a point solution. Just an observation.
Thanks, Greg. Any comments from anyone, please? If this doesn't feel right or you have examples in your own world to share, please share them at any time. So that chart's kind of we try to make it more linear. So it's basically the same chart now. We have the Gartner classical five-stage model. Then we lined it up with our supply chain management readiness, which get you up to what we find is that many of the companies that make it to the exemplar level, that three or less, that inner green ring on the supply chain management readiness, they are they're at that stage where they're ready to scale that stage three wall. And as Greg said, over the last 10 years, what they've done, they have scaled it, those 500 or so companies. And so the program that we laid out is really for them or people that want to move on there. So a lot of companies are at that stage where they may be at stage two or three, and they're trying to figure out how to circumnavigate that stage three wall. Yeah, bringing visibility. There are a few things we can do from a supply chain risk and resiliency perspective. You certainly can do a few things, but to get to predictability, you better be you better have your supply chain management routines, you know, all set in stone. So this is kind of what we've thought over the years. So we'd love to hear what others are thinking. If this resonates with you or doesn't resonate, that's okay. Come at us, as we say.
Mm.
We we're very open-minded, but we're here to help. At the end of the day, we want to help companies get better. And so we do have folks, and some of the folks like I think are even on the call that are experts in supply chain management that can help get that language to be that standard language. And we also have folks that have dabbled in the supply chain risk and resiliency on the call. So any thoughts of what you've experienced over the last few years, we would love to hear. With that, I'll move on to again the five stages just a little bit. We can go into deep detail in all these five stages, but I think with time remaining, we'll probably skip that section, Greg. But these are the five stages: foundational, visibility, sense and response, risk management, and sustainable enterprise. And again, the y-axis is your competitive advantage over time and moving from high risk to low risk. And as you navigate this, so taking the survey, which again takes about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, you will find out where you are at and where you want to be. So this particular example shows somebody who's in visibility and they want to get to sustainability. Obviously, that's going to be a journey. They're not going to do that in a year. Uh, it will take a little bit longer than that. And how do we do that? We identify, assess, and mitigate and manage risks. So that's the mantra, that's the cadence that you need to start building as part of your everyday life in the supply chain risk and resiliency world. And the question is, where are you? And then we
Mhm.
put together, as part of this package, we'll put together your 30, 60, 90-day plan on how to move forward. Just like if you were to engage us in the maturity assessment, the supply chain management maturity assessment, you engage us, we'll give you that 60, 90, 180-day plan of how to navigate yourself. What are the top 3 to 5 things you need to do in order to mature yourself? And the order does matter. Very often, folks will say at level, I'm in visibility, but they'll start doing things that are out of order. They'll go after shiny objects. They'll have a software. We love software service companies. We're not against them, but they'll hire them, but they don't have the processes built. And so they'll go after buying a shiny object and then not get the return on it because they don't have that foundation within their company built to manage their processes to really make that shiny object shiny for their own company. So again, this is free. And let's see if there's any other comments in the uh, in the chat. With that, Greg, any comments or anyone from the audience? We have about 15 more minutes. I think we'll skip the next section, Greg,
That's fine.
because I don't think
Yeah,
there's
we have some caselets. We have a case study behind the definitions. One One individual, Eric, asked if there were specific industries that have exemplars, more exemplars than most. I more or less said my observation: commercial electronics,
Yeah,
aerospace and defense, and some CPGers. Those come to mind right away for
yeah,
me. Just
yeah.
wanted to
Chemicals
share
is a laggard.
that. Sad but true.
Sad but true. They seem to be a laggard. Uh, God bless them. But yeah, the electronics seems to rule the day. And I guess when you start shooting things up in the sky and use electronics, those things tend to you view risk differently. You know, even in the energy sector of building power plants and so forth, they tend to be a little bit more mature because they have to be, because there's potential loss of life. Anywhere there's potential loss of life, they kind of live with risks a little bit different, and therefore they really take these things on. And electronics is everywhere, and we don't tolerate our cell phones to be down. We don't have an attention span for that, do we? All right, so I'll skip to section 4 here, Greg, the chemicals example
Yeah,
here.
sure, sure. We thought we'd share with you an actual a chemical engagement using both tools. So this is a chemical company. They went through the supply chain uh, management or process maturity assessment. There's their chart on the left. You can see their black line across the 13 tenets. Then you can see we did a tier 2 analysis. We went through all 4 tiers. There are 4 tiers behind the free assessment. They went through the entire enchilada. They got tier 2, and we calculated who they were. And they were an emerging leader within their arena at 4.2 out of 10. So they're a leader, they're pretty mature. All right. What you can see is we always do the STO, strategic, tactical, and operational focus. We calculated, and the lower the number, the stronger the tenant in this engagement. And they were pretty strong at the tactical side on the right side, the red tenets. They were strongest as tactical, and then strategic and operational tenets were closely aligned, pretty tight knit. So from our perspective, they are a leader, pretty mature in terms of supply chain processes. Let's take a look at additional elements. So here on the left is their chart in terms of maturity, and you can see they have a few outliers. All right, they do, meaning they're out beyond the 3, 4, 5 level. Remember, the farther away you are from the center, the less mature that process is. All right, over on the right hand side, Jim gave you a sense of the 5 stages of the supply chain risk and resiliency maturity model. They went through as a team, 8 or 9 execs, I think we had. They answered the mail. The tool put it all together, accumulated the data, and said the red indicator says you're at the beginning of visibility stage 2. And then we ask additional questions in the online assessment. Where would you like to go? Where would you like to be? So the as is the red marker. The to be is the black marker. And as you can see, they were at the beginning of visibility, and they said, we'd like to really fulfill all the best practices of supply chain visibility throughout our supply chain network. All good. There's no right or wrong, just different. All right. So let's keep going. Let's take a look. Here's the feedback we received from them. All right. They said, well, this we kind of we kind of put together a synopsis. We've been focused on SCRM for a couple of years. That's obvious. All right. To us, we're still at the beginning of visibility. They were honest. We are a global company spanning 160 countries. So, yeah, they got a pretty vast network to manage. We're a global company, single instance ERP, all good stuff. We are not looking past the visibility stage. This is what they told us during the engagement. Why? Well, they're a very conservative company. We've gone through and understood their risk appetite and their risk culture, which we'll show you at the end of the discussion, but they're pretty darn conservative. So what did they do? The next slide says, well, they essentially put together a game plan. And this company is Dow. All right. And their metrics for measuring supply chain resilience, here's what they came up with. They shared this with us. After the engagement, they shared where they're going to go throughout and to build out that visibility. Because if we didn't tell you those 5 stages, every stage by observation over the last 15 years is about 18 to 24 months in duration, folks. So 5 stages, about 2 years each. That's just an observation we have seen with the exemplars as they move up the maturity curve. So they have 5 phases here. We'll be real quick. First was they wanted to sense and respond. So they're going to start tracking the number of risk events. All right. So that measures their ability to understand both internal and external. Then they were going to say, we're going to build a process to interpret. And that's what they call time to identify. You know, how long does it take Dow to identify a risk and then assess that risk and then generate alternatives, meaning revenue at risk? That's we call it value at risk, but they said we're going to assess each risk because not every risk is the same in terms of money, magnitude, negative impact to the company. Their 4th phase was we got to decide, and we're going to use a metric called time to act. And that's the time between when they run a scenario or identify and assess and the time they develop a course of action and then execute. You know, identify, assess, mitigate, manage, and they're going to execute and use something called time to recover. That's the time between when the event occurs or is identified, assessed, and then mitigated. So that was their response to the engagement. And then one more. Here's what you get initially when you go through the online assessment, and the online assessment is driven by AI ML algorithms, not by us. So basically you go through and the tool says, based on your who you are, where you are, and your culture, and you can see this, they are in visibility. They're what we call pragmatists and conservatives, and they have a bureaucratic box kite, which we'll show you at the end. So we know where they are, who they are, and how they operate. The tool brings them a bunch of action plans that it thinks they have a high probability of achieving. And so they said, well, it said, you got to identify your existing risks. Amen. Through the supply chain. They've done that. Map the supply chain manually or digitally. They've done that for several supply chains. They identify key suppliers from the mapping exercise. They use tools like the Altman Z-score to take a look at some suppliers' financial health. They secured a sponsor. They hired a director of supply chain risk and resiliency. Continue to assess, use risk priority, turn risks into money. That's what they do. Transform manual risk methodologies into automated workflow. That's a work in progress for them. And institutionalize a risk alert solution for external risks outside of their supply chain. Those are still work in process. So we wanted to give you a real live case study. And with that, I'll move on with Jim.
Yeah, so Eric asked a question pretty aligned to the case study in some ways. Greg, you want to read through that?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry, I didn't see it. Yep.
Yeah, well, obviously you were talking, so no worries. So, I mean, this is pretty aligned to what we would say Obviously you need to speak the same language. Uh, you generally start with some BCP exercises, business continuity planning, so you can proactively understand where your risks are and what you're going to be doing. Those are some of the things. It really depends on how mature they are. This is
Correct.
kind of you can't really answer this carte blanche. I would not encourage, if the company is fairly new, I would not encourage them to go out and buy a risk alert system because they won't know what to do with it. You're going to spend a couple $1 million on a system and you won't know what to do with it because
Mhm.
your organization's not ready for it.
Yep.
So that's why we talk about supply chain management readiness. And are you ready to take on risks and manage them proactively? You can always
Yep.
do a BCP event. I mean, that doesn't really cost you much. That's a good way. That's probably
No,
the
it's good. Scenario planning is always good. You can do it
yeah.
manually. You can use a digital model. You can map a supply chain manually. We do that a lot for free, where we have a prospect and they're interested in starting somewhere. And so we advocate, all right, take a small little product line, about 6, 7 SKUs, stock keeping units, and we'll map the supply chain from customer through to suppliers and get everyone who touches that product line in the room for about 3 hours. We do it for free. All we ask is that you pay our way to get to wherever you are. And boy, it is an eye opening because everyone is there from sales through procurement. All depends on your supply chain profile. Everyone's there and they go, wow, it's a wow. It's a wow. It takes about 3.5 hours to do it. And people walk away with, wow, I never knew. And then what we also do is we inject the risks onto those supply chain nodes. It's very, very powerful exercise. And you can start there without, as Jim said, buying $1 million, because our statement, folks, is strategy first, process second, enablers third. As Jim mentioned, we as humans always want to go and buy the shiny object. That's the enabler. We put it into broken processes and things break down real quick. Just my 2 cents.
Eric, did that answer your question? If
Hmm.
feel free to let us know. With that, we will wait for your response. We'll talk a little bit about benefits. The benefits of improving supply chain management maturity. We've talked about this. These are accelerating growth. 40 to 60, and people sit there, how can that be? Well, you're once you talk to each other throughout your supply chain and understand that sales is part of your supply chain as well as procurement and logistics and manufacturing, and you understand it's an ecosystem, there's a lot you can do to increase throughput and output for your customers. And the second, of course, is improve customer satisfaction. And I would even add supplier satisfaction. If you improve on those areas, and that's where our trust comes in, is in those handoffs within your four walls and outside your four walls. What can you do to accelerate your trust? We identified 25 trust factors. We identified what top 8 is for you. And then what are those? How are you performing? Is there a gap between what your customers are saying, what you're saying, or your suppliers and what you're saying? Are how trustworthy you are in managing those transactions. And when we say manage, we're managing the transaction of the data elements that run your company. So we talk about people, process, data, technology. We're talking about how is the data managed within your four walls and outside your four walls? How is that data being transferred? That's going to drive customer satisfaction, and that's going to then drive that income savings here, lower transportation costs, increase inventory because you have data that you trust. You're going to be able to see that. You have a solid supply chain end to end. You know what your supply chain is, and then you can, as we've talked about, you're going to minimize risks and increase your resilience as we've been talking, creating savings, not only in hard savings, but soft savings, the savings that you you see before, uh, the savings that you don't see, but actually improve your bottom line and actually, and also your top line. Again, right back to accelerating revenue growth. So cash is king, of course. And in this VUCA world where companies are being challenged even harder to with tariffs and uncertainty in the marketplace, that eats away your margin. So having your supply chain management processes up to speed is key so that you can start gaining those the these are the top 8 or so areas where uh, insurance companies are seeing you, they see what you're doing, they're going to lower your premiums. You're going to see more places to automate workflow. Your cost avoidance, that soft savings, effectiveness of risk detection and assessment, and cost avoidance, that can bring in a lot of money beyond your wildest dreams. Uh, Working capital, using your capital the best and making sure you're driving free cash flow. That's another great benefit of these programs. And then, of course, cash conversion cycle, CCC, increasing that, and then getting your suppliers their viability. Losing and changing a supplier is going to cost you maybe even more than 1 to 3 million today. So what we always say in summary is think big, start small, act fast. So those are some of the benefits we have seen. If you have any questions, again, please let us know. Greg will close us out with, I guess we're going to do this video. Do we have time for the video, Greg?
I guess, yeah, we got a couple minutes far away. Why
All
not?
right. I'll try the video, see if this works. Here we go.
The Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium comprises of 29 companies and 1,500 risk professionals. We have built out a new, cloud-based, secure supply chain risk and resiliency assessment tool consisting of about 90 questions. The questions will cover risk appetite, our SC&R maturity model, and process management, addressing your end-to-end value chain product offerings. We are leveraging our 10-plus years in the supply chain risk and resiliency education and consulting arena to build out an online, prescriptive 90-day action plan based on questions of discovery, covering where you are and where you want to go in terms of the supply chain risk and resiliency journey. To gain these insights, we look for independent feedback from your leadership, covering procurement, logistics, manufacturing or production, sales, and finance. The report out will leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to ensure consistent, unbiased, tailor-made action plans for your environment. The output of the assessment will yield a 90-day action plan, which can be used to A. Create a COVID survival plan, B. Thrive in a supply and demand unbalanced bullwhip environment, and C. Ensure that your future business objectives are achieved or realized. Would you and perhaps 5 to 8 other executives from your company spend the time to answer our survey? It should take about 20 minutes. You will receive a graphic profile positioning your company on our supply chain risk and resiliency maturity model with insights which show where you are. You will also receive a visual map of your company's risk appetite, highlighting who you are and how do you operate. The final output you will receive is a 3 to 5 page report out, depicting a custom 90-day supply chain risk and resiliency action plan. For every 5 to 8 executives who fill out the survey, the consortium will offer your company 1 free pass for our supply chain risk and resiliency course and certificate, a $1,400 value benefit. Many leading companies leverage our expertise in supporting their risk and resiliency journeys. 90 questions taking 20 minutes of your time to create your customized 90-day SCR&R plan. We look forward to working with you soon.
All right. that, I think we close it out. It's a couple minutes over. Greg, do you have any closing remarks?
Just to follow up on the SCR&R, Supply Chain Risk and Resilience. Remember, it's free. We've put together, we've mentioned or developed the maturity model, which is free. That describes where you are in the 5-stage maturity. Beyond that, again, beyond under the covers, there are other tools and techniques who will that will answer the question, who are you? Meaning, what is your company's risk appetite? You need to know that. If you're going to engage in an SCR&R program, you need to know what your company's risk appetite is, and you need to understand your culture. How do you operate? We have a mantra: what's the shape of your kite? In terms of what is your operating culture. When you fill in all those answers in an engagement, it gives you that 90-day action plan, as we mentioned. So I just wanted to, we wanted to share with you the process on the bottom. We have a lot of checkpoint calls. You get a McKinsey like action plan report with all the visuals. And essentially, then we go through a 90-day process of checkpoint calls to make sure that you're successful in the action items. So I just wanted to give them a thumbnail sketch there. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate the questions and comments throughout. That was really fun. And we'd love to hear from you after this. Please do reach out to us. Yeah, I think you have our contacts, so you go to the consortium's website and put a message in there, or just ping us directly on email. You have our emails. Thank you again. And Greg, any closing comments?
I appreciate everyone joining us, and we're pretty passionate about this, and that's why we've put together a couple of free assessments to get people engaged and get them started, and then stay tuned. Over the next couple of months, we'll be talking about trust. We think trust is very, very important. So we'll have supply chain assessments, we'll have risk assessments, and then we will be able to develop a trust assessment. We think that's a great triumvirate for success. So stay tuned.
And just to add to that, just don't forget that we have some SaaS solutions. We do have a supply chain risk and resiliency framework called ChainSight AQ. And we are also having another shiny object for transparency up and down the supply chain. So those are two new shiny objects that we will be promoting, but our core, of course, is to help get companies ready for those shiny objects so that you can be successful in being faster than your nearest competitor. That's our goal. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.